Thanks to those joining me live and to those that'll be joining me on archive. D-Style here, and I am joined by Joe Habib, aka Beating the Odds with Beeb, aka co-host of Ringside Reporter. What's up, Beeb?
How's it going, buddy?
And for those listening on archive, leave a comment, tell me what you think. Hit that notification button. That way you're notified every time DStyleBoxing comes on live. Leave a comment. Tell us what you think, by the way, if I believe I mentioned that. But thumbs up the video. All right, man. Look, I wanted to do this video because, you know, that's just the way I am. Yeah, but it's fighters pay and what fighters quote unquote deserve. And it is something that we hear a lot about in boxing circles, right? When a fighter gets, you know, because all these things are public in the U.S. they are anyway. So, you know, everyone has an opinion. Oh, this guy, he's making way too much, you know, or hey, why don't they pay this guy enough? And so I do want to dig into as far as what fighters are paid and why they're paid what they're paid. And so everyone could kind of understand. Now, I think you and I both would agree that boxing is a very dangerous sport. And in a perfect world, we would love for every fighter out there to get paid handsomely, right? I mean,
absolutely, without question.
Yeah, I am a very pro fighter. Okay, I want fighters to maximize whatever they can make, take advantage of any situation that will make you a lot of money. There's no reason a fighter should decline a very good offer monetarily, and I believe you agree with that as well.
110%.
All right. Now, the one thing that I find, okay, sometimes is that boxing fans, all right, sometimes don't quite understand what pays the fighters. You know, it's not based off of, well, you're a boxer, so therefore, since you're putting your life on the line, okay, or risking major risk, we're going to have to pay you a very large sum. The reality is we have many journeyman fighters that are making 3 digits per fight. Okay, if they're lucky, 4 digits. It happens often. Would you consider, Beeb, that journeyman fighters are underpaid?
Well, it's a tough question because then if you were to pay the lower end fighters what you're paying the top end fighters, it would come out of their money. So,
right.
You know, the thing is this: if boxing had a union like other sports,
right,
then there'd be a salary cap, then there'd be a minimum, like the NBA and you know, the Major League Baseball Association, all, you know, and NFL, whatever. They have a league minimum. So because boxing's not regulated like that, there is no, you know, league minimum, so to speak. So, you know, just like the WWE and just like the UFC, I guess they're considered independent contractors, basically. So, but, you know, when you see a guy going out there, I mean, I've known fighters, you know, in the Somerville gym around my area, and, you know, in the Mickey Ward's gym up in Lowell, and these guys are fighting 4-rounders, and even guys fighting 6- and 8-rounders. They're making $1,000 a fight, if that. So for you know, an occupation where I guess if you're at that 4-round level, you could probably fight maybe once a month. So let me ask you this: can you live off of $1,000 a month? Can anyone else? Probably not. So that's why a lot of these guys are working jobs, and even, you know, Andre Ward, he's doing that series now, The Contender, and even he said, he's like, this, I'm seeing things that I've never seen before. I'm looking at these guys' lives, and these guys are working 9 to 5s. He goes, I never had to work a 9 to 5 because he was a blue chipper, Andre Ward. I mean, they went to the Olympics or what have you, and he coming right out of the Olympics, he was already getting paid, and you know, got blue chip boxers usually get stipends. They usually get put up in apartments. They get cars and stuff like that. When a manager and a promoter will invest in a fighter like that. But, you know, some of these guys who are journeymen, you know, they're only making $1,000. So are they getting underpaid? Well, you know, it's such a dangerous sport, and you would like to see a fighter at least get a minimum purse of probably $3,000 to $5,000. Anything under that, I don't think is really worth it. You know, and depending upon the amount of rounds, like if they're fighting a 4-rounder, they should at least get $3,000. If they're fighting a 6, maybe bump it up to 5, and then if they're fighting an 8, maybe 7 or something like that. So I mean, I would love to see people get paid more, but then again, also I would like to have like boxing enforced in this regard. Like if
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like you can't try out for boxing, so anyone can be a boxer if they pass a physical.
True.
So I think I think there should be a certain criteria for being a professional boxer. You know what I mean? As crazy as that may seem.
You think it's something where you have to have a decent amateur career or something like that?
Exactly. Like you have to have a certain amount of amateur fights. You have to kind of work your way into the system, have it be a little bit more credible, because you're seeing guys that can just walk off the street, and I've been to cards where I've seen guys get in the ring with sweat shorts on and sneakers. You could tell they weren't real boxers. You know what I'm saying? So there should be some type of criteria for a guy to get in the ring.
Well, that was going to be my first thing. So I mean, look, ideally, right? I would love for fighters to make a good amount. Like, I would love for fighters to, like you said, I would love to have a minimum. I would love to impose that. The only problem is, as you said, you couldn't, if you wanted to, baby. You could, as long as you pass the physical, go become a professional fighter right now.
Absolutely.
You can't just walk into the NFL and become an NFL player. All right, you can't just go to Major League Baseball and just all of a sudden be in the major leagues. You can't do that in hockey. You can't do that in any of these other sports, and even in the UFC, right? You can't just go to the UFC, right? Well, we don't have a league per se in boxing where all the top fighters are. We don't have that. But that's not in place. So it's, while I would ideally love to have a minimum that promoters have to pay a fighter, the reality is, in imposing such a minimum, because anyone could become a fighter, I feel like we would just have less fights be made. You have to think about the promoter, like I personally know, and I'm sure you know as well, people that have put on events and how much they invest in that, the risk they take.
Yeah.
And if you're asking them to put more money into a fighter, all right, when you tally it up, okay, instead of paying somebody $1,000 for a fight, okay, you're instead having to pay $1,000, let's say twice as much, $3,000 per fighter. All that adds up if you're going to have a fight card of like 8 fights.
Yeah.
It becomes more risky, so you're going to have less boxing events, and therefore you may even damage the sport just in general. It could just be like an unforeseen circumstance, but I think it would hurt the sport, ironically. Although ideally, I would love to have a minimum. I would love fighters to have, all these things. The reality is, boxing, the way it works right now, it is the ultimate capitalist sport. All right. It just is like you basically negotiate for yourself as an independent contractor how much money you're willing to fight. And I think a lot of it is based off of potential, what you could potentially make down the line. Is I think the main component as to what keeps boxers around,
Well, and here's another sad part about the sport, and it is what it is. But sometimes you'll see fighters who are the best in their division, but they may not be the biggest attraction. So you're not really getting paid based off of your skill and your accomplishments. You're getting paid off of your popularity, your image, and I understand that. Right. I mean, you should be your own biggest promoter if you're a boxer. You should be able to promote yourself and attract people to you. But again, it just seems like it's just a rough sport. It's an unfair sport in a lot of ways. But then again, life's not fair, as they say. So, but I just think that you could be right that maybe if there was a minimum, maybe that certain fight there'd be less fights, obviously. But then again, the flip side of that is there'd be higher quality fights too, possibly. You know, if you made it a tougher criteria, and
To
you
get in.
made fighters have to have a specific amount of amateur fights, and
Do
then
you
if and
think
then,
there should be like in effect like two different types of boxing licenses, like the one they have now, and then maybe one that you become quote unquote licensed now as an official top tier fighter or something like that?
that would be kind of interesting too. Yeah, just like the WBA has a regular champion and a super champion, you could have like preliminary fighters and But you know it's funny, you kind of do have that already. It's kind of like an unwritten rule because like you said, we categorize fighters like journeymen, gatekeepers. So we kind of do have that to an extent, but it's just not official, you know.
Right. Well, I agree. I mean, the main thing to me is this. I feel like Curtis Stevens, right? You know how he walked out of the ring.
Curtis Stevens
Harper.
Curtis Harper.
Curtis
Okay,
Harper. Yeah.
yeah.
My bad. But Harper walked out of the ring, and I couldn't believe. I don't know about you. We all have our own little experiences. Sometimes you could just run into some, but I couldn't believe how many people were siding with Harper when he walked out of the ring. I'm not saying it was the majority of people, but there was enough that made me scratch my head and wonder what are they exactly that he wants respect and he wants a higher purse according to what he said. But I personally said, I mean, that's not the way you quote unquote get respect.
No,
and that's not going to get you any fights in the future, So,
but this is the thing. Yeah. Sometimes you get mad and you don't think straight, and you just fly off the handle and you do something impulsive. That was definitely an impulsive thing. I heard tons of rumors about why he did it. I don't know if they're true or not. I heard that because he went back and he was asking, he wanted to see his contract. So apparently he signed a contract and he didn't actually, from what I understand, and I don't know how true this is, he was thinking he was going to get a specific amount of money, but then I guess on the contract it had a different amount of money on it, but he signed the contract, so that's why he wanted to go back and look at it, because he wasn't happy what he was paid, but he also thought that money was taken away from him, basically. You know what I'm saying? He thought he was going to get a certain amount, and then it got cut, in other words. So that's why he got upset. But in an instance like that, then you don't even – it was almost like you don't even go – you shouldn't even go in the ring then. You should just say, I'm not fighting. Like Sugar Ray Robinson one time, before a fight, the day of the fight, he went to check out the ring. And he was like, yeah, the ring is too small. I wanted a bigger ring. So right. they tricked him because he wasn't going to fight. So what they did was they added some length to the measuring. They tampered with the measuring tape to make it turn out to be that the ring was bigger than it really was. They added some inches to it or whatever. So that was the only way they can get him to fight. But he wasn't going to fight. So fighters will complain about certain things and protest about certain things, but they don't start the fight and let the bell ring and then walk out. They just don't show up.
Right.
So that's the thing. So he was basically trying to do a protest, and I was talking about this on the show the other day. It was almost as if he was saying, well, F you to the promoter, basically, but what he really did was he kind of did F you to himself, because he just sabotaged his career. I don't think he's ever going to get a fight again.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah, the best thing would have been to just pull out of the fight, and and not be televised like that, because that clip could be pulled up over and over again, and it's kind of embarrassing to him, and right. It's going to be used to make a mockery out of him, to make him seem like he's a clown, like a freak show. And that will probably haunt him for the rest of his life. That'll follow him around forever. And because of that, he'll never get a fight again.
Yeah,
he'll probably never get a fight again.
I mean, look, if I'm a promoter, there's no way I'm going to trust that guy. There's
No.
just no way. I'm not going to do it.
And I
Right?
and I and I kind of I'll tell you how I'll tell you I defended him too to an extent. You know why I defended him? I'll explain myself.
Sure.
Because everyone was calling the guy a coward, how he was afraid, he was this, he was that. But the guy had 20, like 18 or 20 fights, somewhere around there. He's already been knocked out 3 times. So he knows what it's like to be knocked out. So it's like there's no real fear in getting knocked out once you've been knocked out a few times. That's why you see guys who are journeymen, they continue to be journeymen without fear, and they'll go in there regardless because they know they either know how to survive and stink out the joint, or they know it's going to end quickly. So they're not afraid to be put out of their misery, and they get used to being hit after a while. No one likes it, but it's not good for the body or whatever. But once you've felt a certain way, a couple times, you kind of build up some type of tolerance to it psychologically.
I agree, but what was exactly that you were defending him on? The fact that he was afraid, or
yeah, I just people were saying, oh, he's a coward, he's this, he's that. I said no, the guy was legitimately pissed. He may not have done the right thing, but I don't think he was afraid.
Oh, I got you.
He walked in the ring. He was kind of nonchalant about it. He looked over there, and he got knocked out by Chris Arreola before too. So it's like the guy's been in there with ranked fighters before. It's not like he had like 1 or 2 fights. This was a guy that has experience. He knows what it's like to be in there. He knows what it's like to get knocked out. Everyone's like, oh, he looked across the. Everyone's like, oh, he looked across the ring and then he got scared and he walked out. No, I mean, it was he knew from the minute he left the dressing room that that's what he was going to do.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean?
He knew it could have been. It could have, but it did have something to do with the opponent, though. I believe. Okay.
See, I don't. I kind of disagree with that, but
look, I don't know how much he was paid. Right. First of all, if you were under the impression that verbally you agreed to a certain amount, right, and then the contracts all of a sudden they cut the pay, then you don't. First of all, you don't sign the contract. Okay.
That's what I don't understand either. I'm like, because that's what he said when he walked back to the dressing room. He's like, I want to see the contract, and they were like, you can't see the contract. The contract's already been filed with the commission.
Right. And they can't file it to the commission without your signature.
Exactly.
So they've already you already had an opportunity, right? This is why fighters, if they can't do it themselves, they have managers, people that handle this for them, right? Yeah. They're independent contractors, and you are responsible. All right, we have to hold fighters accountable for what they sign. All right, it's as simple as that. And if you signed something you didn't like it, then at that point you've already agreed to it. But if you knew you were not going to fight, then like you said, don't even go out to the ring.
Yeah,
you never know. Maybe if he would have made a fuss in the back, they may have told him, okay, tell you what, we'll give you an extra $1,000 or something, but you go out there. Like, we're alive. Like, you never know.
And a lot of times that's happened too. You've seen fighters be like, hey, I want more money. Some fighters will do that. The day of the fight, I want more money. And a lot of times they'll get it.
Yeah. But that's to me, that's something he should have done. But what I personally disagreed with, as pro fighter as I am, there seemed to have been a lot of it's a lot of people agreed with what he did because they're just anti-promoter, right? And it had to be that the promoter Schaefer had to have screwed him over. There's no other explanation around it. And to me, even if he did screw him over, he signed a contract, man. He's got to fight. What does he want? Like, you can't go into the ring and walk out of the ring. You just can't do it.
That's nuts.
But the other point, as far as Schaefer goes, look, man, I know he went on. Where was it? Fox Sports 1 or Sports Center or whatever. He went on TV, and he said something about what's the Nigerian fighter's name?
I can't remember his name, but he's supposed to be a real big knockout artist, I guess. But he's only got a few fights.
Yeah, I think that this guy All right. I truly believe that when Schaefer, I lost my train of thought for a moment, but when Schaefer went to the went on TV and he made the most of the situation, right? So he's on Sports Center or whatever, telling people, hey, that's what real fear is. I mean, he's making guys walk out of the ring in fear. You know, I don't blame Schaefer for doing that. Might as well make something out of this real negative situation.
Well, I mean, he's trying to promote the other guy, so why not do that?
Well, might as well, right? I mean, well, what is he supposed to say?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
Now, the really quick, and then we'll get to the elite fighters. But when it comes to journeyman fighters, what people need to understand is with any boxing event, there's a budget, right? Like there's only so much they have to pay fighters. You know, there's only so much. So my message to boxing fans, if you want fighters to get paid more, if you want to put more money in the pockets of fighters, then what you need to do as a boxing fan, you need to start supporting your local fighters, right? You need to start going to the local boxing matches, the ones that are not televised. Okay, you need to start going to from the amateurs to when they just turn pro. There's small events all the time that boxing fans just don't support, right? All you see is family members there for these events. So that's what, if you want to help journeyman fighters make more money, then you need to start going to these fights. You need to start supporting these up and coming fighters more often than not. Okay. Because if more people aren't going to these fights, there is no money to pay these guys. You know, at that point, it becomes charity, right? Doesn't it become charity at some point? If you're just giving
Absolutely.
these guys, you can't just keep giving them this money. You know, you don't want charitable donations.
No, I understand. That's true.
But that's the way I see it. Now, I do want to talking about the top tier. Okay, it's something that your favorite promoter said, Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn had said, right, that Mikey Garcia is, quote, an overpaid fighter, right? That for what Mikey Garcia actually generates, the amount of viewers he gets, amount of people that go to his fights, Showtime overpays for him, right? And now I'm just using Eddie Hearn as an example, but there's been many other examples of fighters that, remember Berto when he was making $1 million a fight with HBO, right?
Yeah.
And there was like 10 people in the crowd. All right. There's all these examples. What are your specific thoughts on fighters that maybe don't generate, right, what they're getting paid? Do you think that it's good for the sport to do that, or do you think that's something that needs to be changed?
Well, I got in so many arguments with people who were talking trash about the PBC, and they were like, oh, well, the PBC's overpaying these guys. They're overpaying these guys. And I'm going to be honest with you. I understand when you see a guy like a Floyd Mayweather or an Andre Berto fighting a lower level guy and getting paid top dollar to do it. Yep. But this is what I've always said, man. I mean, I don't believe there's such a thing of overpaying anyone. I mean, if you're able to negotiate a salary and a purse, then that, it is what it is. So that's the thing. It's like if a fighter can negotiate his purse and someone's going to give it to him, then he deserves it. And especially the nature of this sport where one punch can change everything, change your life. Watching that Gerald McClellan-Nigel Benn fight, that really changed my perspective of the sport, because you've seen other people like Dooku Kim and Ray Mancini, whatever, but I was too young to really understand all that when I was, watching stuff like that on television, and other fighters that have died in the ring. We've seen other fighters, suffer serious injuries in the ring and not be the same person they were when they went into the ring as when they went out. So after seeing the Nigel Benjamin McClellan thing, because that was a fight that I actually watched live, and I was old enough to kind of understand what was going on back in '95. I was 25 years old, and after I saw that, I really, really said to myself, like, these guys should get paid whatever they can, whatever amount they're offered, top dollar. It's nothing is too much after seeing that. So that's why I have that type of perspective right now. Even when Andre Berto was getting the $2 million to fight the Carlos Quintanas of the world or whatever, it didn't bother me too much. The only reason why it did bother me a little bit is when HBO didn't have enough money to, they ran out of their money. So maybe they could have used their money in better ways. But just like Eddie Hearn was saying, oh, well, Mikey Garcia really is not going to have a big money fight this year. He's not going to be able to close out the year with a big money fight or even be on pay-per-view because Showtime is putting on Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury. Okay, that's fine. But this in a situation with like Berto was on HBO like a couple times a year, 2-3 times a year, and he was getting like, I guess from what I understand, and again I can't verify this, but I guess he had a $2 million minimum for his fights at that particular time when he
That's
was.
what he. Well, my thing is, so I have a very nuanced view on this, but first, like in Berto's case, or let's say in Broner's case, or there's several fighters, even Garcia's case, right? I think these networks many times pay these fighters off of potential, right?
That's true. That's true.
They see it as an these corporations, right?
Yes.
HBO, Showtime, PBC, whoever. Okay.
Yeah.
They're making an investment on what they believe perhaps in the future they could be a pay-per-view star, or maybe they'll generate higher ratings, bring more subscriptions to their network. So a lot of it is potential, a lot of it is quote unquote investment. And to your point, if HBO wants to invest in a fighter, right, then who am I to say that they shouldn't, right? I mean, that's what they are wanting to do, and it's helping fighters get paid. The only problem I have personally, okay, I have a little bit of a problem paying fighters off of potential, right? I think fighters should be paid off of what they're generating and what they personally bring to the table for any given fight. I think every fight should be aimed to, at the very least, either break even or make profit, right? That's to me anyway. I think that's the right way to do it. You'll better use because the reason you should do that is because you maximize the budget that you have, and you pay more fighters, many of which are trying to make a living off of this sport. You pay more of them in the process, right?
Yeah.
So if Berto wasn't getting a $2 million guarantee to fight a very underwhelming opponent, let's say instead Berto got a $900,000 payday, right? That would give you $1,100,000, right? 1.1, $1 million that you could utilize to make another fight where you could pay two guys $500,000 each, and that'll be a big life-changing payday for those guys.
Yeah,
and
that's a good strong counter argument, and it's hard to argue against that either, But that's up to the network to be able to realize that and be aware of that. So it's not really the fighters. This is the problem. And I think we can agree on this. People will start talking trash about the fighter, like, oh, look at Adrian Broner getting, I can't even believe he's getting $2 million, blah, blah. Don't blame the fighter. I mean, the fighter should get what he negotiates, as I said earlier. So it's the networks that you got to take a look at.
I mean, let me put it this way, babe. If you're able to negotiate an increase, or even if you're offered an increase, right, by your job, even if in the back of your head you're thinking, man, I didn't even expect him to give me this much of a raise. You're not going to say that, right?
Yeah.
You're going to gladly take that pay raise, right? It's if you're selling a car, right? And you know that this vehicle is only worth $2,000, but somebody shows up and says, "Man, I want your car. I'm going to give you $10,000 for it. You want to sell it to me?"
Yeah.
Are you going to tell them, "Oh, no. I mean, just give me $2,000 for it"?
Exactly. And again, like, I'm the type of person where if I find out someone's making more than me at the job that I feel doesn't deserve it, in my opinion, I feel like I'm doing just as much, if not more than them, and they're making more than me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit there and confront that person and get mad at that person. I'm going to talk to my boss. And I'm not even going to say his name when I talk about it. I'm just going to speak in generalization type terms. I found out what other people are making around here. I've been here longer than these people. I've done more than these people. This is what I've done. These are my accomplishments, and that's how I would try to do it a little bit. I try to be tactful about it.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Haplotype, yes, we do.
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's going on?
So that's why,
yeah.
So go ahead,
so again, that's the way I look at it. Like, get mad about the person or the entity or the company that is actually paying the person. Don't get mad at the person themselves, because because if you were in the same situation, you would do the same thing. You would take the money. So you got to look at it from a objective perspective.
Now something quick before I go to Haplotype, and I'll ask this question to him as well. Do you guys know, like, when the WBC charges a sanctioning fee, other than lining their pockets, what else is this money used for?
Conventions,
running the organization. I mean,
day-to-day operation.
They have to pay their employees. They have to pay for their website hosting.
I guess plane tickets and stuff like that.
Plane tickets, yeah, conventions, like Beeb said. I mean, that money basically funds the entire organization that they exist.
I get the organization having to be funded. I get that these people have to make a living too, but I don't know, man. In my opinion, maybe I'm overstepping, but like when they get, like, let's say what's the usual? Is it 3 or 2%? Well, what's the sanctioning fee percentage?
I thought it was 3%.
Okay, so if it's 3%, right? Because so many times I'll see, like, let's say Pacquiao or Mayweather, somebody at that level have a fight.
I think in general that's true, but I think sometimes it's a special case, like when it's a big, huge purse.
Right.
Sometimes they'll take a flat fee, like $200,000 or something.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. All right.
Here's something else you forgot to mention too.
Go ahead.
They still have to make all those belts. And those belts are made of gold, or actually they have a silver belt now too.
Well, actually, I don't know if this is still true or not, but from fighters themselves have said these are not made of real gold. All right.
Oh, okay.
But, I think the belt's on a budget, but they're made out. I mean, they make them out of fossil. Did you want a belt with the 20 million euro fossil in it? Anyway, what's up?
The funny thing about that is that, like, almost any rock you find is like a 20 million-year-old fossil of something.
Gotcha. Well, what I was going to say though is, whenever there's like a big event, like a Mayweather fight or a Joshua fight, whatever, the sanctioning fees pocket a good amount, whether it's a flat fee or a percentage out of these fighters.
Yeah, I think it's a percentage. I think it's a percentage.
Yeah, but then you have, like, I've seen, like, these undercards, and it's mainly, in fairness, like in the dark matches, but it's still in that same event. And there's dudes fighting like for $800. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. I think of the percentage they get, I think a certain percentage of that they should pass it on to the undercard fighters. That's my opinion, right? But I think that would make a little sense to me. I don't know. But Haplotype, how's it going?
Great, man. How are you guys?
Good, good.
I'm good.
What's going on? I was just listening in and trying to get on when I could. I think it's an interesting subject. tend to go all the way back with things and take things to the beginning, and basically sports in general from day one, the athletes were really exploited. And you know, the people like the Hearns and Bob Arams of the world 100 years ago, they were taking home, you know, 80% of the profits and paying the fighters as little as they possibly could. And the guys were just so dumb that are not educated in business enough to know that they were being taken advantage of. But like all things, the pendulum swings. And I think the pendulum now has swung too far, at least in the reflection of like the upper 1% of boxers or the upper 2%. Let's say they're getting, like in the United States, the upper 1%, 2% are making way more money than the rest of the 98%. Right. I think in the boxing world, that's just as true as anywhere else. And I think it's a little bit skewed. I think, you know, there should be some kind of rules and regulations as far as a cap on how far they can go when one guy on the card and that's on the dark part of the card is getting paid $800 and the headliner's getting 30 million. Right. You know, that there should be some kind of a balance there. But really the guys that pushed that envelope the most were, you know, the Benny Leonards, the Sugar Ray Robinsons, and then Don King when he came out with the $10 million purse for Ali and Foreman that he basically didn't really have, but he ended up being able to get it later on. And that's what brought it into the double-digit million, you know, category back then for heavyweights. But now it's gone crazy for every weight class, and it's just, I think it's a little bit askew when you look at it from, yes, if I could get $100 million for a fight, I would take it. But at the same time, there's a guy on the card that's getting, you know, $1,000 or something, and he's been working for 6 months for this. So, you know, you got to put it all in perspective and balance it out, in my opinion.
What would be a good balance? Like what?
Well,
in your opinion?
I think, you know, let's say, how long would an average training camp be? Let's say like 8 weeks, you know,
8
something
weeks,
like
yeah.
that. Yep. You gotta figure this person's working for 8 weeks plus the night of the fight and putting on this show. So you should pay them, you know, if someone's getting, you know, $5,000 for that, that's not very much money for that much work, you know, like It should be at least like 20,000 or something like that. So that person can live to fight another day and not have to like work as a cab driver.
Do you guys think a league like MMA has, like with the UFC, it would be a good solution?
I think that would be a great solution if boxing weren't so old and have so so much baggage, you know, that it has going. It's the most independent sport in the world, and I don't think it's possible to converge all that into a league unless someone like, you know, YouTube really wanted to invest like billions of dollars into boxing and really take over the way they have in stand-up comedy, for instance. They've really taken over stand-up comedy, paying, you know, people who aren't worth that much money, a lot of money, just to do a stand-up special on Netflix. And they've sort of drained the swamp, for lack of a better term, for all the other networks to want to put on a stand-up special. If they were to look at boxing like that and go for it like that, then maybe, but I don't see that happening. I mean, it would be great if it did, because you'd have it like the UFC, but I don't think it's possible at this point.
What do you think, Beep?
The only thing about the UFC is they have so much control over what the fighters can do, and then they have like their sponsors and stuff like that. So I kind of like how the NBA is, like you know, players can do whatever they want outside of the league, and I still think you could have like each country. This was what I always said, because I don't think you could do this worldwide. I think each country should have its own commission, sort of like the UK actually has, you know, the British Border Control, and they're in charge of the whole area. Obviously, they're smaller than us, so it's probably easier to do. But I think that we should have like like a national type committee, and I think we should have universal rules in every state, and every commission should be bound by those rules, like they have the ABC, the American Boxing Commission, and I think they should really enforce that strictly. And that way, I think you can kind of. I think boxing should be regulated to some degree. It's almost like the wild wild west right now. So if you had a certain set of rules, and even if they could try to, I don't think that could ever happen. But like I said, if you able to unionize it like the other sports are, I think you could definitely get some uniformity and some consistency across the board. In terms of not only just enforcing rules, but if you had like a nationwide commission, and you got rid of the sanctioning bodies, and then you only had like one champion per division or whatever, you could still have like I don't know, like lower. You could still have like the lower level belts, but only one world title. You could have like the regional belts. Like you could be a North like a North American, like you could be a specific region of the country's champion, so to speak. But you could still be the world, but eventually you'd still fight for the world title.
Like the Midwest champion or something.
Yeah, the North American champion, the South American champion, whatever. Sometimes they have like the Latino champion, whatever. But I mean, you could still have Well, they do. They have like the WBC Federbox champion, whatever. That's like
I mean, in Europe they have like the European title, right?
And you could still have those belts, but if you fight in that country, if you have that belt, then you're bound by those set of rules. So if you have, I don't know, it would be great if you could find a way to have this commission funded somehow by like a group of investors, possibly. I don't necessarily want the government to get involved in it, because I'd be a little skeptical on how they would do it. But if you just had like a big group of investors, like if all the promoters or something, or all the promoters and managers got together and they helped create this together, and then they just put a board of governors on there and just have league officials or whatever, and just have it like a national commission. That way it would be a lot more organized. And I think that way you'd have more consistency too with how the purses are divvied up as well. But I still would love, I'd love to see a union. I really would love to see a union.
I think there is some union within boxing, isn't there? Where they have like a retirement fund and stuff. Maybe within the sanctioning bodies. The
WBC does offer a pension for fighters. And you can criticize WBC. A lot of people can criticize WBC all they want, but I mean, as far as taking care of the fighters, I think they do the most. Whether or not they're consistent on enforcing, their clean boxing program or not, at least they have it, And again, they always implement rules that are, help the safety of the fighter. Seems like they move forward. They're more advanced. Whenever a situation comes about, like I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think I want to say they were the first to have 12-round fights, but I think that was actually the IBF that did that. No, I think it was WBC that actually did that. I'm sorry, yeah. WBC was the first sanctioned body to have 12-round fights instead of 15 for the safety of the fighters, whether or not you think that's better for the fighters or not.
When you say they do more, it's not a very high bar,
It really isn't. But again, unfortunately, I'm comparing them with the other sanctioning bodies, so they kind of stand out.
As far as the government running it, I mean, have people not seen Washington? Right. I don't know if I want the government running the sport.
Yeah.
So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, John McCain. John McCain, may he rest in peace. He was trying to put it in a bill to kind of see if boxing could be regulated by the government, and obviously it did not pass. So, or it didn't come to fruition.
Right.
But he was mentioning that before.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, you know, the way I usually come at things is like the simplest solution is always the best.
Yep.
And I think that really the best thing for boxing would be if the four major sanctioning bodies could come together and each one appoints a member to a special board, let's say, or maybe they appoint two members to a special board. Um, and the goal for that board would be to make boxing as popular as possible, because what these sanctioning bodies are doing right now is hurting boxing, the sport, in order to try to line their own pockets. And what they don't realize is that they're hurting themselves by doing that, because Nash's governing dynamics prove that you have to do what's best for yourself and everyone else. So if everybody appointed a member to this board, right? And the goal of this was to have unified and undisputed champions so that the sport would be more simplistic and more people would be able to follow it and more people would be able to enjoy it, rather than having to explain, hey, oh, so-and-so is the WBC champ, but then the WBA champ is this guy. And once you get to that point, you've already lost that person.
Right.
The goal should be that it should be simpler and easier to recognize. So there would be one, you know, each sanctioning body could continue to do what they're doing, have their own rankings, et cetera, but then there would be a ranking between all of them too. And then the goal would be to always be unifying and getting undisputed until you have someone retire or, you know, they lose, you know. So I think that right there would do more, honestly, for boxing than anything else. And that's sort of just the way I see it.
It's not a bad idea either. I mean, it's a start, right?
Yeah, but sometimes if it makes too much sense, boxing doesn't do it, though.
Yeah.
I mean, just about anything would be better than what we have now. You know, there's some pluses, right? Look, we can't ignore the fact that for how many years now, like the highest paid athlete, right, has been a boxer. You know, there's always a boxer like in the top three, you know, of paid athletes. The problem is that once you get past like the first top 10 highest paid athletes, or top 10 highest paid boxers, I'm sorry, it begins like it's like a huge nosedive as far as the pay that these fighters make. Like me personally, I would rather the sport create 100 millionaires than one guy make 100 million. I mean, I don't know if you guys agree with that, but
I totally agree. And I think the reason why there's usually, and especially since Floyd has been around, there's usually been a boxer in the top 2 or 3, or at least number 1, is because in other sports, you have a league minimum for other players. So like if you're in the NBA, I don't know exactly what the league minimum is, but let's say it's $200,000. They can't pay LeBron, you know, so much where they can't pay these other players $200,000 at least. Where in boxing, you can pay one guy $1 billion and everybody else can get 10,000. You know, so I think a league minimum may be a good thing.
I thought the league minimum was like 1 or 2 million in the NBA.
Probably.
It could be.
Yeah.
I just made up that number.
Oh, okay.
I really don't know.
That's a pretty.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's, and that's what the first thing me and B were talking about was, like in the NBA, it's not just anyone could say, you know what, I want to join the NBA. It's not something you could just do, you know. Someone who's in pretty good shape could just decide if they want to. They could get a license to be a boxer, you know, and as long as they pass the physical, that's it. That's all you need to be a licensed boxer. Do you think Capital Title should be harder to become a licensed professional boxer so it could become easier to implement minimums and stuff like that?
No, I don't think so. I think probably what they have in place is good enough as far as like for young guys or people who are coming up that want to become pros,
Yep.
you know, they're more strict on those people than they are the all-e's who already have brain damage, but they know they can make $50 million in their next fight. They're going to pass him on all his tests, or you're going to find a doctor that will give him a clean bill of health at least. But when it comes to like the low-level guys, they're pretty careful about that. And I think the beauty of boxing is that it is the most independent sport in the world. I think they should have a minimum for somebody who's fighting on a televised card. I think it should be at least, 25,000, let's say, or something like that for the 2 months that they put in of training and the fight, maybe something like that would help. I don't know.
What do you think, Beep? Beep there?
I agree. Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know 25,000, but at least maybe 7 or 8,000 or something like that for like a 4-rounder or something.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you guys are saying. There should be some type of, if it's a televised fight, this is what the minimum is. So if you're thinking of putting on a televised event, then hey, you already know the rules, right? Whoa.
Yeah.
Right. All right. But with that said, guys, you guys have any final thoughts before I wrap this up?
No, we're all set.
What about you, Haplotype?
No, but thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
All right, guys. This is DStyle, Haplotype, Joe Beep. We're out. Peace.
All right. Take care.